Hello everybody. Today I'm gonna speak a little bit about a topic that appears in sales that guys has risen, and I would like to share some thoughts on this. The topic is the future is multi-stacked. Okay, so agenda. First we'll check out what it means and why we will have a multi-stack future. What we need for that future to be good for us, and let's see. So first, can you change the slide? Okay. So first, a short reminder from past presentation where I shared a screenshot of the old monolithic architecture that we had many years ago, and current state of the IT, where we have much more layers and much more technologies involved. And this thing is appearing more and more often, and we need to take it into account in our daily operations. Future is multi-stacked. We get new projects that use one of many front-end technologies and one of many back-end technologies. So that's the first challenge that we have related to it. Another type of challenge that we have with future multi-stack is that sometimes there is a customer who comes and says that he will have multiple projects for us, but in different technologies. The sales that we do right now are more related with the solutions that we provide. So we encourage more diversified systems that are already implemented, or CTOs that want to use particular technologies. Sometimes we can influence it, sometimes we can't, and it's something that we need to get used to. Of course, this imposes a big challenge, because we can't. It's really a challenge to have that many technologies and have a very deep understanding of each of it. It's also a challenge to have experience in many technologies, and that's enough to run those projects. Of course, we can't specialize in every technology. So we can't specialize in React and Angular and Ember and Vue and Rails and Elixir and Python and .NET and Java and Go and Kafka. we can't really specialize in everything. So what we will do, and what is happening, is that we work with in this environment where there are multiple stacks, but we work with other companies. And I think in the future it will become more and more common use case, and we have to prepare for it, be aware of it, and try to do our best in this environment. So I think to prepare of it, what we can do is to work on some higher level elements of building the systems. So leadership and project management, that's a universal thing that we should try to be good at, and to provide value to customers in that area. We should also provide a good architecture and infrastructure support for our customers, and also help with building good APIs and UIs for those systems. So first point, so leadership. This is leadership and project management. This is a very important topic, and by leadership I mean the overall leading of the project, so showing initiative. And if something doesn't work well in the current system, to try to come up with a better solution. If there are us and other vendor, let's say we provide a front-end solution and they are providing back-end solution, it's important to try to lead it and make the cooperation productive. So if we have some standards on it, try to share it, show why it's important. and make the buy-in for the other side. In project management, Simon has and people from leadership team are working on best practices. I think it's good to know it, because those are really simple things that we can easily apply on every project, like short stand-up every day, a retro, a proper backlog. Quick learning, that's also a very important area. So I think because we will work with many more solutions, we will need to learn more quickly. So the initiative recently with the workshop on every Haxorz is one way to improve it, but there are many other things that we can do. So there's of course the shared repository where we share some links, but nothing beats the real work. So it's important to have a reference projects in different technologies. For example, I'm building a React reference application where we try to work on best practices, and if we pick up some new solution that makes the code simpler, we try to show it there and show to customers that we have the competency to actually make things simple and productive with our approach to it. Of course, we try to use as much open source inside of it as possible, but also it's important to make all the parties connect. And this means not only the front end, but also the back end for it. Yes, specialized partners. That's a very important point. Specialized partners is something that we have in form of Softcraft, for example, where they handle the big data part for us, and we handle the front end and configuration applications. So it's working quite well. And I think in future, if we have, for example, a project where a customer needs a backend in .NET, for example, and we have a partner who is very good at .NET, has competency and experience, it's good to continue the relationship with the customer and work on a project, even if we can't handle all of it. So let's say we cannot handle the backend. So I think we should try to shift our minds to deliver value to the customer and still try to work on those projects. Let's say if there is opportunity to work on, let's say, a front-end part of it and have the company to do the .NET, that's really good. It is especially important because if we work with different technologies, we can also try to, especially with the same partner, we can try to make a good synergy with them. So we can build a good practice in, let's say, in React, and we can share it across multiple technologies. And innovation. Innovation is also important to try out new stuff. So we have, when we have new challenges, we should not say no to them because we haven't done it. It's rather that we should have an open mind and try to try new approaches to solve problems. So, for example, GraphQL is a new innovation that is happening at the moment, and it's something that we should also learn and use on projects. Next area of improvement is architecture and infrastructure. So I think what is important for us in context of working with more complex tech stacks is that is a single page application, which is a separation of the front end and back end code, which makes us much more easy to work with providers who have different backends. Another thing is that the backend systems themselves can be distributed, or they can use microservices architecture, which means that they internally also can have diversified tech stacks. This makes it also usually easier to migrate solutions and try alternative technologies on the backend side. the same with the front end. If some front end needs to be changed to a different technology, often you don't need to change the backend, or the backend changes are small, especially if you have standardized protocols on API. Big data and machine learning is another thing that is important, especially in terms of covering the whole solution. So even if we don't specialize in, let's say, Hadoop, for example, we still should understand how to get the stuff done via the partners, and what partner needs from us, let's say on the front end part, or on infrastructure or any other task, so that we can deliver the full value to customer. As server provisioning is also important, because when you have like multiple technologies, you have to be a little bit more better in setting up the server environment. It's no longer a simple Capistrano task, but rather a little bit more complex setup. And often each service might require different server or some library, so it's better to also have a good practice on managing that. API standards. That's something also worth to mention, that there are some existing standards that are used in company. For example, JSON API, which is used by Ember. It's really nice to, even through on, let's say on React, we have much more choices, and it's not that much that you by default have to go with JSON API. It's better to actually go by default with JSON API, because then it's easier to share solutions between projects. So the front-end code can more easily use the same approach to handle resources, handle login, handle roles on the backend. Everything gets simpler. So I think standardizing around those some libraries is also good. So when we go with GraphQL, and one team goes with GraphQL, it's also good to think out in longer terms that we will try to use it on other projects as well. So take your time to design stuff better. And I think it will benefit us, and it will benefit customer if we try to standardize on API points. Finally, the UIs. I think there are many libraries on the UI, but what is worth to mention that Bootstrap, which we have been using or is used on many projects, is a little bit old, not so perfect. But also there are new standards approaching, and one of most exciting is material design. Here you can see a small demo of what material design can do. So it allows you to make quite nice interfaces, not only on the web but also on the mobile, where many problems are already solved. So imagine that you have to build this whole thing custom code. It's a lot of effort. And I think building on top of already provided library that implements, let's say, this standard is better than building everything from the ground. Of course, it's a matter of discussion which library we should use exactly, but still, I think using a library on 2 projects or 3 is better than using a different custom solution on 3 projects and have to manage that all. Also, I think overall, using open source and supporting it makes it also very beneficial. But I would like you to start thinking about trying to unify it if you see some opportunities on this, talking to each other and discussing it. Can we go next slide? I have tried to collect some actions that we can do. I think there are 2 important points. First one is to don't be afraid of learning new stuff. So take opportunities, especially to do cross-team learnings and to learn on new sales and new project approach. So I gathered some examples where someone didn't know a technology and learned it on a project or experiment for customer around the area. And it provided value for that person, for the customer, and for us because that person became better or more expert in the area. So I think it's very good that when you learn new technology, to try to pick up the technologies as close to what customers need. And all the time we get questions for current customers about some specialized area that they need. Someone might need another React developer, so we might want to train someone when we don't have one available. On the other hand, someone might have a challenge in a project, and that challenge might be solved in other projects, so it might be good to take the developer to that project to share the knowledge and help to speed up spreading the know-how. So I think it's really worth to mention. Also, sometimes some people like me, they work on one technology, then they switch to another, and they switch to another. And despite it might mean crazy, but once you learn or master a front-end technology on a certain level, when you switch to another one, you reuse a lot of knowledge between it. So it's learning is important part of the process, and I think it's an opportunity and a challenge. So I wanted to show some examples so that you can see how you can more effectively do it. Another thing is leading projects and making impact there. So I think it's important to be active in project development. Not be passive developer who just waits for customer, for example, to define the backlog, but try to work with customer to make the backlog better, maybe propose some improvements to it. Sometimes you might, like me, for example, you might develop a certain practice on one project for testing, let's say, React components, for example, and you might want to propagate it. I wrote an article, for example, about that, and I try to encourage more people to use it so that the testing is faster on the project and more predictable. It also is beneficial for the customer because we have it's usually the practice that we try to build here are productivity. So it's the customer might not have tests because it was time consuming, and with a proper practices it's time efficient and productive. Błażej has introduced a REST JSON API instead of REST API, which had also some benefits and unified the code. He could reuse some code. So it's all good examples of what's good to do to improve this collaboration. Yes, that's it.